As much as I'm trying to capitalise on this, Instinct Shaggy meme, and talk about Scooby-Doo again, I'd rather not talk about another terrible film. So today I've decided to change it up a little and talk about a film I actually like. The Iron Giant. I think it's important to say at the beginning of this video, I'm one of these people that likes remakes and reimagines of films, and you'll see why I say this later on in the video. But to all of these people who say, stop remaking films because you're ruining the stories and the franchise, in a sense I agree with you, that's fine, but at the same time if you've got something new to bring to the table, and it's something new, not just... I'm happy to take a look, and I'm happy to see where you will go with your sort of new imagining of the same franchise. I mean, for an example, look at Travis Knight's Transformers series, rebooted the franchise based on a good story. And for a bad example, I completely agree with the whole Last Jedi thing, trying to shoehorn in characters that aren't even relevant, and trying to rewrite the entire Star Wars series as a whole. So The Iron Giant, it's actually one of my favourite films. It's like second on the list, right after Treasure Planet. P.S. if you want to see me talk about Treasure Planet, put it in the comments below. Now, The Iron Giant was directed by Brad Bird. Now, Brad Bird, you'll probably be familiar with him. He worked on stuff like The Incredibles and Ratatouille, some of the Disney cartoons, that in my eyes are some of the best ones that Disney Pixar have come to create. You know, apart from Treasure Planet. Soundtrack! So if you weren't interested in his films before, at least you know he's made some really good modern films. So I'd recommend looking at his older stuff as well, considering this film came out in 1999, and even got the lead animator on Hercules to step in and do his part. The film focuses on this kid called Hogarth.
Hogarth? An embarrassing name. Might as well call him Zeppo or something. What kind of a sick person would name a kid Hogarth? Hug! Hogarth Hughes!
And this big killer robot that comes down to essentially destroy the Earth. Except it doesn't. Instead he's a dumbass and tries to eat some pylons, which electrocute him and give him memory loss. And then him and Hogarth become friends, and Hogarth tries to hide him from the government that are trying to find him because they've also got word that it might be Russians. Like I say, this film focuses heavily on war, but Hogarth tries to teach the giant essentially life lessons and what it's like to be a kid growing up in that kind of era. Now this is really interesting, because we get to see the giant evolve and develop into almost a human throughout this film, and that's what makes the ending so significant. It's also where we get everybody's favourite line.
Where's the giant, Mansley?
Well,
But the story of the Iron Giant isn't exactly what I wanted to talk about today, and that's one of the reasons I'm not going super detailed into the story. If you guys want to watch the film, it's a great film. I think it's only like £7 on YouTube. Essentially go to the YouTube, type in Iron Giant and buy the film. It's a great watch. No, my point for today's video is why the Iron Giant would make a great live action film. And that point takes me to Ready Player One. I don't know if you've seen this 2018 release, most of you probably have, but this film tells the story of Wade Watts, and yeah, it's not significant to the Iron Giant film, but the Iron Giant is in the film. Don't worry, I'm not going to be getting too involved into this film. All you need to know is that the Iron Giant plays a significant part in the ending of that film, in trying to help them get the third key. He was also stuck everywhere, all over the branding of Ready Player One, probably because the branding of Ready Player One focused mostly on the 80s and the 90s, and threw a bunch of references in to try and get people to go and watch the film, Iron Giant being one of them. And to be fair, it's one of the reasons why I actually went to go and see the film. I'd never heard of Ready Player One, the actual book. I need to compare it to the film, and I'd like to do that as a video one day. Because Ready Player One, the film, is another 10 in my eyes. But the end of the trailer, or the end of most trailers, had the Iron Giant fighting against another robot at the end of the trailer. And we all know how big robots fighting each other does in film. Really well. So the Iron Giant doesn't play a massive part in the story aspects of Ready Player One, but he is there and he is in the film. And that's what's important in my point. Now, Ready Player One wanted to create this sort of semi-live action, so it looked very realistic, but you could kind of tell it wasn't. Almost branching into the uncanny valley, but not going so far to the point where the characters all looked really, really creepy. But the main thing was the look of the Iron Giant and what he would ideally look like in a live action setting. Which shows we have the technology now to create essentially a world and a character that could be fully CGI at that height. So you might be asking why I think a live action Iron Giant would work. Now, other than the fact that it just would be a really cool film, the reason Brad Bird made the film animated in the first place was because it was done differently to traditional animation that was done at the time. A lot of the animations at the time were stuff like Looney Tunes, and they would get hurt in very extreme ways and focus a lot more on animals rather than people, because that's what kids wanted to see at the time. And Warner Brothers actually asked Brad Bird to add animal characters and make it a lot more child-friendly, and therefore make the film a lot more cartoony because it would appeal more to their child audience. But thankfully Brad Bird said no, Warner Brothers held back a little, and we got a really mature and really decent animated film, targeted for kids as well as adults. Now take that same idea into the live action scene. A lot of the main reasons these studios use stuff like CGI is to make a film visually appealing, essentially make stuff that don't exist, and don't necessarily add things towards the story. That's where the Iron Giant could change things. If you don't use CGI to focus heavily on visually appealing things and you use it just to create a character, people are going to be more interested in your characters rather than your CGI. And that's exactly what happened in the animated film. People didn't care that it was animated. They cared about the characters that were animated. And that's exactly why I think a live action would work. Because it's the same principle. Now, the main changes they made from the book was the film was targeted on this main quote. What if a gun had a soul and chose not to be a gun? This is the change they made from the Iron Man, and it developed into a really good story. Now, the only unfortunate thing in this scenario is that Brad Bird has already admitted he does not want to make an Iron Giant 2, and he does not want to make a live-action adaptation of the film. However, another one of the reasons why I think this would work so well is if you look at what Disney are doing. Disney at the moment are making live-action adaptations of their animated stories. Stuff like The Jungle Book, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, and the list goes on. And the one thing they all share in common is that they basically tell the same story as their animated film. However, the ratings are still really good for them, and that's the reason they keep making more and they keep recycling the same story. Essentially, you could do the exact same thing with the Iron Giant and not change the story at all. However, what Brad Bird has said is he won't remake it unless you've got something really new to bring to the table, which is probably why he allowed it for Ready Player One. Because it doesn't focus on the story of the Iron Giant, it focuses on the character, and essentially brings nothing new, so you can't lose anything. But what I'm thinking is you could go heavily back to the book. You could essentially borrow ideas from the book and the animated film and create a live-action film with the characters of the animated film, however taking a lot of story aspects from the book, such as being set in London. That completely changes the animated film. And like I say, if you've got the same characters, you could tell a completely unique story. One that old Iron Giant fans would probably like to see, and also fans who read the book. Now, I'm not saying I'm any kind of story writer or anything like that. You'd obviously have to work out all the little in-between bits, probably borrow heavily off of the animated film. But my point is I think it would be a good idea to see Hogarth and the Iron Giant in a live-action setting and essentially reimagine the Iron Giant story into something we can show to today's generation about how kids lived back in that sort of time period. And finally, I know it's probably the most obvious one, but it would just be really cool to see. You know, it was cool to see him in Ready Player One. That's the reason he was in all of the trailers, because it was essentially an animated character in a live-action setting. So yeah, that's point 3, it would just be really cool. Overall, I'd really like to see this kind of thing happen, and I know it probably never will. And it's unfortunate because I think it would be really cool to see. Just implementing those few little changes could make such an interesting film. But alas, it probably will never happen. If you hadn't guessed, the original Iron Giant film gets a 10 out of 10 from me. I love the film so much and I wish they could make a live action adaptation of it. I think it would be amazing to see, but I don't think we'll be getting it anytime soon. But enough sob story, I just want to say thank you so much for watching this video. It's been great making videos for the past couple of weeks, and even last week you guys seem to be so supportive of letting me take my time and actually making a decent episode for you, and I hope this has been satisfactory. One thing I will remind people of is most people I see are watching these videos, but they're not actually subscribed, so make sure you're hitting that big red button below and ringing that bell that's right next to it, so you will be informed by notification when I release a new video. Remember, we're trying to get to 200 subs by the end of February, so you guys literally have one day to try and get to that 200 mark, so if you haven't subscribed yet, do so now. I appreciate all the likes and support I've been getting. If you guys want to leave a recommendation of what you want me to talk about in the comments below, that would be greatly appreciated, and also leave a like and tell me whether you liked or disliked this video, and give me a reason why. Like I said in my update video, I've got people already emailing me for different films to watch. Next week's episode might be a little bit different, and then the week after that I will start getting onto some of these requests. But for now, I'm Tommy, and I'll see you next week for another episode of I.W.T.A.I.